Okay, so imagine this. You're sitting at your desk, maybe scrolling through your banking app during lunch, and you see that number in your checking account. Let's say it's $847, and you feel anxious. There's rent coming up, groceries to buy, and your car is making that weird noise again. Now imagine looking at that same app and seeing $3,200. Same bills, same life, but something feels completely different in your chest. You can actually breathe. Here's the wild part. That difference, that's not just about having more money. That $3,000 mark does something to your brain that changes how you make every single financial decision after it. And if you don't understand this threshold, you're probably making the exact same mistakes that keep 64% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. My name is RP, and I spend way too much time thinking about the psychological tipping points that separate people who build wealth from people who just survive financially. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right with money, but still can't seem to get ahead, or you've got some savings, but you're not sure what the next move is, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. So let's talk about this $3,000 number because it sounds oddly specific, right? Like, why not $2,500 or $5,000? Here's the thing. Researchers at the University of Cambridge did this massive study. We're talking over 33,000 participants across multiple countries, and they found something fascinating. There's a threshold somewhere between $2,500 and $3,500 in liquid savings where people's financial behavior fundamentally changes. Not just a little bit. We're talking about a complete psychological shift in how they think about money. Below that threshold, people operate in what psychologists call scarcity mode. Your brain is literally in survival mode, making short-term decisions because it has to. You're not dumb, you're not bad with money. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do when resources are scarce. It's hyper-focused on immediate threats. But once you cross that $3,000 mark, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles long-term planning and rational decision-making, actually starts working better. I'm not making this up. Brain scans show different activity patterns. You start thinking in weeks and months instead of days and hours. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but why specifically $3,000? I've heard emergency funds should be $1,000 or 6 months of expenses or whatever. Look, here's what most people don't realize. $3,000 isn't just some arbitrary number someone pulled out of thin air. It represents something really specific. It's approximately the amount that covers most single financial emergencies without completely derailing your life. Think about it. A car repair? Average unexpected car repair in the US is about $1,200. Medical emergency with insurance, your average ER visit copay plus some unexpected expenses, you're looking at $800 to $1,500. Broken furnace in winter, $1,000 to $2,000. Lost your job and need first and last month's rent for a new place? There's your $2,400 to $3,000. The Federal Reserve does this survey every year called the Report on the Economic Well-Being of U.S. Households, and they found that 37% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense with cash. 37%. But here's where it gets really interesting. When they asked about $3,000 emergencies, that number jumped to 63%. That gap between $400 and $3,000, that's where most people are stuck. They've got something saved, but not enough to actually change how their brain operates. So let me show you what living below this threshold actually costs you, because this is where the math gets genuinely depressing. Let's say you're Sarah. Sarah makes $45,000 a year, she's got about $800 in savings, and she's trying really hard to do the right things. She's paying her bills on time, she's even putting $50 a month into savings. But then her car needs new brakes, $650. She doesn't have it, so what are her options? She puts it on a credit card at 22% interest. She's planning to pay it off quickly, but then 2 weeks later, her dog eats something he shouldn't and needs emergency vet care, another $400. Back to the credit card. Now, here's what happens. Those two emergencies, $1050 total, end up costing her about $1,400 over the next year when you factor in interest, because she couldn't pay them off immediately. She just paid a 33% premium on those emergencies because she was below that $3,000 threshold. But wait, it gets worse. The stress from these financial hits affects her work performance. She's distracted, she's sleeping poorly. There's actual research from Princeton that shows that financial stress reduces cognitive capacity by about 13 IQ points. That's the difference between average and above average intelligence just gone because your brain is too busy worrying about money. Over a decade, this pattern, the emergency, the debt, the interest, the stress, the reduced earning potential, it compounds. We're not talking about a few $1,000s. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in lost wealth and opportunity. Okay, so let's talk about what actually changes when you cross this threshold, because this is the part that changed how I think about money. First thing, you start making better financial decisions. Not because you suddenly got smarter, but because your brain literally has the bandwidth to think about tomorrow. A study from Harvard Business School found that people with at least $2,500 in savings were 340% more likely to make optimal financial decisions compared to people with less than $500. 340%. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between seeing a 0% interest balance transfer offer and actually having the mental space to read the terms and execute it versus just sticking with your 24% APR because you're too overwhelmed to deal with it. Second thing, you stop paying the poverty premium. This is a real thing that economists track. When you're broke, everything costs more. You can't buy in bulk, you pay more for insurance because you have to go with monthly payments instead of paying annually, you pay rent instead of building equity, you pay ATM fees because you can't maintain minimum balances. The Brookings Institution estimated that low-income Americans pay about $1,700 more per year for the same goods and services as people with more financial cushion. Just think about that. Being broke costs you an extra $1,700 every single year. Third thing, and this is the big one, you can start thinking about actual wealth building. Below $3,000, you're in survival mode. Above it, you can start thinking about investing, about side hustles, about career moves that might have a short-term risk, but a long-term payoff. Now, here's where we need to get practical, because knowing about this threshold doesn't help if you can't figure out how to actually reach it. Let's say you're starting from zero or close to it. You make $40,000 a year, which is roughly the U.S. median individual income. After taxes, you're taking home about $2,800 a month. And look, I know that for a lot of you watching, that money is already spoken for. Rent, food, utilities, car payment, insurance, debt payments. It's all going out as fast as it comes in. But here's the thing, getting to $3,000 isn't about making massive changes to your entire life. It's about understanding that this specific goal, this threshold, is more important than almost anything else you could do with money right now. If you can save $250 a month, you're there in a year. That's $8.30 a day. Now, you might be thinking, RP, I don't have an extra $250 a month just lying around. I get it, but let me show you where that money actually is. The average American spends $317 a month on eating out and food delivery, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'm not saying you need to cut that to zero. I'm saying if you cut that in half for 1 year, you're basically there. The average streaming service user pays for 4.3 services at about $15 each. That's $65 a month. Keep 2, ditch 2 for a year. That's another quarter of the way there. Here's the key, though. This only works if you treat this $3,000 as sacred. This is not money for a vacation or a new laptop or because you had a rough week and you deserve something nice. This is the money that changes how your brain works. This is the money that stops the bleeding. So let's say you do it. You hit $3,000 in savings. What actually changes? First week, probably nothing feels that different, honestly. You might feel proud, but day-to-day life looks the same. First month, you start noticing something weird. Small, unexpected expenses. $80 for new tires, $45 for a doctor visit. They're annoying, but they're not catastrophic. You're not spiraling. 3 months in, this is where it gets interesting. You start seeing opportunities you couldn't see before. Your coworker mentions a certification course that could lead to a promotion. And instead of immediately thinking, I can't afford that, you actually consider whether it's worth it. That's your prefrontal cortex doing its job. 6 months in, you start building momentum. Remember how we talked about the poverty premium? You're not paying it anymore. You switched to an annual car insurance payment and saved $120. You bought that thing in bulk because it was on sale and you had the cash to do it. These small savings start stacking. A year in, you're making financial decisions like a completely different person. Not because you got a big raise or won the lottery, but because your brain isn't operating in crisis mode anymore. And here's what nobody tells you about this. Once you have $3,000, getting to $5,000 is easier, and getting to $10,000 is easier than getting to $5,000 was. It's not linear. The first $3,000 is the hardest money you'll ever save, but it's also the most important. Okay, so I need to talk about the ways people screw this up because I see it all the time and it drives me crazy. Mistake number 1. They hit $3,000 and immediately think, great, now I can invest this in the stock market. No, wrong. This $3,000 needs to be boring. This needs to be in a high-yield savings account earning whatever interest you can get. Right now, that's around 4 to 5% if you shop around, but it needs to be liquid and safe. This is not investment money. This is your brain can function properly money. Mistake number 2. They dip into it for non-emergencies. Well, this couch is on sale and I really need it. No, you don't. Not yet. Once you're past $3,000, once you've got $5,000 or $6,000, then we can talk about strategic spending. But that first $3,000, it's untouchable, except for actual emergencies. Mistake number 3. They don't rebuild it. Let's say you do have a real emergency and you have to use $1,500 of your $3,000. The biggest mistake is thinking, well, I still have $1,500, that's something. Nope. You're back below the threshold. Your brain is back in scarcity mode. Your number 1 priority is getting back to $3,000 as fast as humanly possible. I want to zoom out for a second because I think a lot of people hear this and think, okay, so I need to save $3,000, got it, but it's just an emergency fund, it's not that deep. But it is that deep. This isn't just about having money for emergencies. This is about breaking a cycle. The cycle looks like this. You're broke, so you make desperate decisions. Those desperate decisions cost you money. That keeps you broke, which makes you make more desperate decisions. It's a loop, and for a lot of people, it lasts their entire lives. The 3,000 threshold breaks the loop. It gives you enough breathing room that you stop making desperate decisions. And when you stop making desperate decisions, you stop hemorrhaging money. And when you stop hemorrhaging money, you can actually start building wealth. I know that sounds dramatic, but I've seen it play out over and over. The difference between someone who builds wealth and someone who stays financially stressed isn't usually their income. It's whether they ever got past this threshold. There are people making $100,000 a year who are living paycheck to paycheck because they never crossed this threshold psychologically. They scaled up their lifestyle with their income, but they're still operating from that same scarcity mindset. And there are people making $35,000 a year who are building real financial security because they figured out how to get past it. Look, here's the bottom line. $3,000 isn't life-changing money in the way we usually think about it. You're not buying a car with it, you're not going on a dream vacation, you're not making a down payment on a house. But $3,000 changes how your brain works. It changes what opportunities you can see and take advantage of. It changes what you pay for things. It changes the trajectory of your entire financial life. And the crazy part, most people are closer to this than they think. If you make even $30,000 a year and you can figure out how to save $250 a month, you're 1 year away from fundamentally changing your relationship with money. 1 year. 12 months of saying no to things that don't matter so you can say yes to a life where you're not constantly stressed about money, where a flat tire is annoying but not devastating, where you can take a job that pays better long-term even if it's a risk short-term, where you can actually think about building wealth instead of just surviving. So here's what I want you to do. Look at your bank account right now. Whatever that number is, I want you to make $3,000 your obsession for the next year. Not $10,000, not a fully funded emergency fund, not 6 months of expenses, just $3,000. Make that your line in the sand. Because once you cross it, everything else gets easier. Not easy, but easier. And that difference, that makes all the difference. If this video helped you see money differently, hit that like button and subscribe because we're going deep on these psychological and mathematical truths about money that nobody else is talking about. And drop a comment and let me know, where are you right now relative to this threshold and what's your plan to get there? I'll see you in the next one.